everyone, and welcome to the Debrief on ABC News Live. I'm Kimberly Brooks. Thanks so much for joining us. Attorney General Barr grilled on Capitol Hill today for more answers and details in that Mueller report. And the people at University of Virginia are having a pretty good day. They're the new NCAA champs. Plus, 2 words worth repeating: Beyonce and Netflix. Get excited. But first, here are your headlines.
Another Democrat is making a run for the White House. Congressman Eric Swalwell of California announced his bid on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, becoming candidate number 18 in the race for 2020. Swalwell is taking up the fight against gun violence. Today, he's holding a town hall on the issue in Florida.
The Trump administration has undone a deal that left Cuban baseball players play in the U.S.
The deal between the MLB and Cuban Baseball Federation went into effect just 4 months ago. Now the National Security Council confirms plans to rescind the deal that allows Cuban baseball players to join the MLB without defecting. NSC spokesman Garrett Marquis tweeted Monday that the Trump administration looks forward to working with the MLB to identify ways for Cuban players to benefit from their talents, but, quote, not as property of the Cuban state. Cuba's Baseball Federation responding in a tweet calling opposition to the deal politically motivated.
Former WFAN radio host Craig Carton is speaking out and saying that getting arrested might have actually saved his life. Carton was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for his involvement in a ticket fraud scheme that was used to cover his gambling debts. Speaking on ESPN Radio, Carton said he has accepted the outcome.
Maybe I need to go to prison for a short period of time. Maybe I need that, and I need that punishment, and the humility of it for me to have really gotten my act together.
Carton also said he believes his time in prison will help boost his return to radio once he has finished serving his sentence.
Our top story: Attorney General William Barr testifying on Capitol Hill today and getting a lot of questions about the Mueller report. Devin Dwyer has been covering it all, and so I want to go to him. He joins us in Washington. Devin, from your opinion, what was the biggest takeaway?
Hey, Kimberly. Well, it's the first time we got to hear from the Attorney General, both since he has taken office up on Capitol Hill and since the Mueller report landed in his lap. And, of course, he offered his take on the conclusions. Terry Moran, our chief national correspondent here as well. Terry, the big headline out of this is that we expect to get our hands on it within a week. Attorney General Bill Barr said he is in the thick of making redactions right now, 400 pages. And I was struck by the fact that he laid out these 4 buckets of categories of material that he is going to be taking a big black marker and Xing the stuff out. Seems like it's going to cover potentially a lot of this report.
Quite a bit. He'd say that's consistent with Department of Justice policy and with the needs of the nation. Obviously, the classified material sources and methods, grand jury stuff, derogatory information, and I can't remember what the 4th one is now.
Well, privacy and reputation, and then the case, it's material that might compromise ongoing litigation, some of those charges.
And the problem he has, Devin, is that Democrats don't trust him. When they got that 4-page report, and he categorically said first, quoting Mueller, that the evidence did not establish any kind of conspiracy or coordination between Trump campaign and Russia, and then, well, I don't think the president obstructed justice. In 4 pages, quoting 2 sentences and a little bit more of a 400-page report, Democrats just don't trust him.
A lot of skepticism about that. In fact, the chairwoman of the committee said it's unacceptable that you as an individual spent 48 hours pouring through 400 pages and distilled it that quickly. She said it raised more suspicions than it did suggest you were an impressive person. But then there was this exchange about the issue of obstruction in the document with Florida Congressman Charlie Crist, former governor of Florida, who asked the Attorney General about his quoting of Robert Mueller. Take a listen.
On the question of obstruction of justice, you stated in your March 24th letter that the Mueller report does not exonerate the president. Can you elaborate on what is meant by does not exonerate the president?
I think that's the language from the report.
Right, I understand that.
That's a statement made by the special counsel.
Right.
I reported as one of his bottom line conclusions, so I'm not in a position to discuss that further until the report is all out. And then what is meant by exonerate is really a question that I can't answer, what he meant by that.
But as you sit here today, you can't opine, after having read the report yourself, why it reaches that conclusion that it does not exonerate the president.
That's right.
Reports have emerged recently, General, that members of the special counsel's team are frustrated at some level with the limited information included in your March 24th letter, that it does not adequately or accurately necessarily portray the report's findings. Do you know what they're referencing with that?
No, I don't. I suspect that they probably wanted, more put out.
And that line that Charlie Crist grilled him about, Terry, is going to be the one that all of us are going to zero in on when the report comes out in a week. Why did Robert Mueller explicitly say does not exonerate? And of course, Bill Barr said it does exonerate. So there's sort of everybody wants to see the evidence.
Right, and there's two possibilities. One is that Special Counsel Robert Mueller said, I'm not the guy to make that call. All right, it seems unusual because he is, after all, the prosecutor, but the President of the United States, accusing the President of the United States of a crime, A, the Justice Department policy says you can't do it. B, if anybody's going to cross that line, it should probably be the Senate-confirmed, democratically accountable through the Senate, Attorney General of the United States. That's one possibility. The other possibility is he said, there's a lot of bad stuff that Donald Trump did here, and yet it's difficult to see whether or not it was obstruction of justice. So we'll find out soon enough.
And within a week, according to the Attorney General, a lot more from that hearing. Headlines on the Affordable Care Act, the Justice Department's position on that, and on immigration. The Attorney General was asked about that separating children and families policy. Kimberly, Bill Barr says he supports the president's standing order, which says that we should not be separating children from their families at the border. So a lot underway, and the hearing will continue into the afternoon.
All right, we're going to be looking for the rest of your updates, Devin. Thank you so much. Terry, if you will, I would love for you to stick around. I also want to bring in Karen Travers at the White House. ABC News has learned that President Trump came far closer to closing down the southern border than what we originally thought. At one point, he was actually ordering aides to shut parts of the border within 24 hours. This coming as he's changing all of the leadership at the Department of Homeland Security. So, Karen, I really want to talk about this DHS shakeup, this purge, if you will. What's really happening and what can we expect going forward?
Well, of course, Kimberly, it started with the Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen being pushed out over the weekend. Yesterday, we got word that the president was also pushing out the director of the Secret Service, who reports to the DHS secretary. And we're learning that by the end of this week, it may be that about half of the agency heads that are under the umbrella at DHS, people whose agencies report to the Homeland Security Secretary, there could be more than half of them out of those positions of leadership. And they could be either vacant or filled with people who are in an acting capacity. This, of course, is raising concerns on Capitol Hill. There are Republican lawmakers who say that they're worried about a leadership void at a very critical agency during a critical time. Because, of course, Kimberly, the president's focus right now, his top priority is border security, and he is really shaking up things at the big agency that oversees all of those policies.
Yeah, and Terry, I just want to talk to you. I mean, what does this actually mean, big picture? What do these moves, what does this say about the direction of this administration?
Well, one thing it says is that the president knows that this issue, immigration, which he's focused on, is one of the main reasons he's president of the United States. It's still the issue that drives his base. And from one perspective, he's failing at it, right? He promised that he would get a hold of this, and yet there is a crisis on the southern border. One, many analysts believe he helped cause by the family separation policy and then getting stopped by the courts, and now some analysts believe people are rushing the border before the law can be changed. Whatever the cause now, President Trump has to deliver. He's got to deliver that wall, which he's promised, and he's going to build a lot of it. But he also has to deliver a solution to the problem. And right now, he believes that the Department of Homeland Security hasn't been tough enough. He wants them to go to the edge of the law to stop this surge of migrants to the southern border, and maybe even beyond it. And so he is staffing up that department with acting secretaries and heads of the agencies who will owe him, because they haven't been Senate confirmed, they serve at his pleasure more than usual heads of departments. And he wants them to go after it, to get after it. One note. One of the people whose head is apparently on the chopping block is the general counsel of DHS. That's the person who makes the legal calls. Is the president's order lawful? Is it constitutional? Does it abide by the law? We are hearing that the White House, the president, doesn't like the way that lawyer has been calling those shots. So he wants a more aggressive enforcement policy, and he is cleaning house at DHS to get it.
All right, Terry and Karen, I mean, it seems like everyone's on the chopping block. Let's talk about the Secret Service director. What do we know about that and why?
Yeah, this came out yesterday, the White House saying that the Secret Service director would be moved out. There'd be a transition to another career official at the agency. And Kimberly, we're told that this was actually a couple weeks in the works. It's not tied directly to Kirstjen Nielsen being pushed out, and it's not tied to the Mar-a-Lago security breach from just a couple weeks ago. So I think what you're looking at here, though, is the president really trying to bring in people that he thinks, as Terry said, could put in tougher policies in place. Not clear what exactly that means at the Secret Service. That's not an agency that's going to be directly involved with the border. I think if you also want to broaden this out here, too, there's a lot of focus this week on DHS because of Kirstjen Nielsen. But right now, by the end of the week, we could see at least 10 major leadership positions in this administration, that's cabinet officials and other top positions, being filled right now by acting personnel. The president sees nothing wrong with this. He has said recently that he likes doing it this way, having people who are not going through the Senate confirmation process, because it gives him more flexibility. But I think you might start seeing some grumblings on Capitol Hill that this is not the way it's supposed to be done, and certainly concerns that you have people who are overseeing very critical policy issues. There's an acting Secretary of Defense, an acting Secretary of the Interior, and in a couple of days we'll have an acting Secretary at Homeland Security as well.
All right, lots of temporary positions. Okay, thank you, Karen Travers. Thank you, Terry Moran. We appreciate those updates. And Karen had mentioned Mar-a-Lago, so we're going to move into that. The Chinese intruder who tried to skirt past security at Mar-a-Lago last week will remain in jail as the investigation unfolds. So I want to go to Victor Oquendo, who is outside of Mar-a-Lago with new details. Victor?
Kimberly, some of those details laid out in court are alarming. Yu Jingjiang accused of breaching security here at President Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Prosecutors say that when investigators searched her hotel room, they discovered a device used to detect hidden cameras, along with 9 thumb drives, 5 SIM cards for cell phones, and more than $8,000 in U.S. and Chinese currency. Zhang was arrested on March 30th after allegedly telling security officials at the private club that she was there to go to the swimming pool. Investigators charged her with lying to Secret Service and entering a restricted space, and claim they found a thumb drive with malware. A Secret Service agent who testified said he tried using that thumb drive, and when he plugged it into his computer, it immediately tried to download into his system and install files. Meanwhile, Zhang's attorney says that she made no direct misrepresentation at the club or to Secret Service agents. She'll be back in court next week. Kimberly?
All right, Victor, thank you so much. And we're going to move overseas. Voters in Israel are heading to the polls today as Benjamin Netanyahu looks to win his 5th term in office, which would make him the longest serving leader in Israel's history. So I want to go to Jordana Miller. She's live at Netanyahu's election headquarters with more. Jordana, what's at stake in this election for people in the U.S. and the people of Israel?
Well, Kimberly, this election really has shaped up to be a referendum on the leadership of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. His supporters are flocking behind him, saying he is the ultimate statesman. He has close ties with world leaders, including President Trump, and he's the only one who can keep them safe from Iran, Israel's arch enemy. But those today who will be voting against him call him corrupt. They say he has attacked the pillars of Israel's democracy to clear his name, and they really are looking for a change. Now, in terms of what it means for the U.S., well, certainly the White House has indicated that they are hoping Netanyahu will win today. Many would argue that Trump gave many election gifts, we could call them, to Netanyahu in the lead up to this election. He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He hosted Netanyahu at the White House, and then he sent Mike Pompeo to Jerusalem. Kimberly?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, if he wins, this would be a record 5th term for him being in office. But can you tell us a little bit more about his challenger?
Sure. His challenger, Kimberly, is the former head of the Israeli army, General Benny Gantz. He has seemed to really galvanize Israelis who are looking for a change. And he has presented himself as a uniter, as someone who's an honest and straight shooter, someone who can kind of restore unity to Israel and integrity to the office of the prime minister. That, of course, all in contrast to Israel's prime minister, who is facing potential criminal charges for corruption.
All right, and obviously Netanyahu needs his right-wing base to turn out in big numbers. How is he doing that? Some of them are controversial, yes?
That's right, Kimberly. He is, really trailing in the polls coming into this election tonight. But because he's part of this right-wing bloc, and here in Israel it's a parliamentary system, it's about parties, not leaders, he can still win even if he ties tonight or trails by a few seats. And he has been basically pivoting to the right to get out his voter base. Just over the weekend, he said that he would be willing, and he is promising actually, to annex Jewish settlements in the West Bank. It is a deeply controversial decision condemned by Palestinian and Arab leaders, but that is what he is saying he will do. We'll see if it will pay off at the ballot box for him.
All right, Jordana, thank you so much. We'll be looking for those results. And on to Uganda. New today, police say they have made arrests related to the kidnapping of that American tourist while she was on safari. And as we've reported, she is now free along with her guide. Ian Pannell is on the ground there with the latest. Ian, I want to know about the arrest. What's new in this case?
Yeah, hi there, Kimberly. Well, first of all, let me set the scene. We are in the town of Kihihi in the district of Kanungu. Why are we here? Because this is where the arrests were made. I'm just going to step out the camera a second and allow the cameraman just to push in a little bit downtown, just so you can get a sense of whereabouts we are. This is a small provincial town, but it's also a border town. We're on the Ugandan side, but the Democratic Republic of Congo is not very far away, and this is where the search is now focused. I'll come back into shot. You can see lots of people. We're seeing kids coming back from school, people heading back from work, heading back home for evening meal. But we know that these arrests have been made. We spoke to a local police commander. He said that 8 arrests in total have been made in connection with the kidnapping. They're not saying these are the kidnappers, but in connection with that kidnapping, and that the investigation is still going on. Kim?
Yeah, so we know that obviously the tourist and her guide were freed and they're safe, but where are they now?
Yeah, that's right. We believe they're on the way home. I have to be honest with you. We've tried to find out exactly where she is, and so far, no answer. We know that she flew into the capital, Kampala, yesterday. We saw her. She was handed over from custody of the local police authority, the National Police Authority, to the U.S. Embassy. But after that, we're not quite sure. The driver, interestingly, I mean, we've been in touch with his family. Just to give you some sense, we've all focused on the American woman, but the local driver, we spoke to his family. No one from the authorities had told them that he had been freed. And certainly the last time we spoke to him, he hadn't even had the opportunity to talk to them. I think that has now changed. One other thing to bring you up to speed on, we know that President Trump tweeted, right, about this, calling on the Ugandans to arrest those responsible, otherwise tourists wouldn't feel safe about coming back here. That's caused a lot of consternation on the ground. This region relies heavily on tourism. Has two main foreign trades in some senses of earning hard currency, has coffee and it has tourists. This is an isolated incident. It is unprecedented, but of course tourists will feel queasy until those people are in custody. The president of Uganda also tweeting saying, look, it is safe to come back now. They have the situation under control. Kim?
Yeah, and Ian, just before we go, I mean, you've been in Uganda from the start of this case and now to the conclusion. What has it been like for you being there throughout the entire thing?
Yeah, good question, because I think, quite often we focus on the bad news in this job. And I have to say, this is an incredible country. I'm just blown away by it. The people are friendly, they're very welcoming, and they don't have much, but they're very happy to see you. The wildlife is just stunning. I mean, we were driving home after one of our live shoots the other night, and we just came across a herd of 20 elephants just wandering across the road. So it is an area of outstanding natural beauty, and people really, really rely on the tourism trade here. They do need to resolve this, however, and try and put it behind them and move on. But of course, Ugandans are saying, well, look, you have trouble in America too, so let's keep everything in perspective. Kim.
Thank you so much, Ian. We appreciate that. All right, guys, did you stay up last night to watch the NCAA finals? Okay, well, it was a crazy finish. The University of Virginia topped Texas Tech in overtime to win the school's first national championship. So TJ Holmes was in Minneapolis, and he has more. TJ?
All right, Kimberly, you told me yesterday you're not really big sports fan, and you better have watched this game last night, because it turned out to be another classic, another gem. This is what we're used to seeing from the Virginia Cavaliers. They give us these heart attack games, if you will, but sure enough, that was the case again last night on their way to their first ever championship in school history. So how did we get here? These are two of the top 3 defensive teams in all of college basketball. So a lot of people thought this would be a low-scoring, not very exciting affair, and it did have a slow start to it. But, man, the teams found their rhythm, picked it up, get to the second half, and it takes a three-pointer from DeAndre Hunter in the final moments, in the closing moments, to put this thing into overtime. In overtime, though, Virginia took care of business, ended up going 12 for 12 from the free throw line. They were as cool as anything you've ever seen, but they have been used to this, right? Because they have been in these close, tight, miracle-ending games almost the past couple of games here at the NCAA tournament, and put this thing away. So your headline is Virginia wins its first ever national championship in an overtime classic. That just scratches the surface, actually, of this story, because when you take into account what happened to this team last year, becoming the laughing stock, really, of college basketball in losing to a 16 seed, the first time ever that a 1 seed has lost to a 16 seed in the first round of the NCAA tournament. That was Virginia last year. They had to deal with all the jokes, the ridicule that came for the past year. To persevere and get back to this point and to win the championship the very next year, this is really a sports comeback story for the ages. So congratulations to those kids for what they were able to do. And on the other side, Texas Tech, not a lot of people had them this was their first Final Four. Not a lot of people had them in the championship necessarily, expected them to win, but they are a tough-minded defensive team, put up a great fight, and they were so close there at the end. But congratulations to them on the year they had. But Virginia is going to be partying for quite some time, but also they'll be thinking about what they pulled off this past year. They are now a part of sports history. Kimberly.
Yes, history makers. Congratulations to the team, and congratulations to TJ for having that fun assignment. All right, guys, if you watched Coachella last year, then you already know Beyonce was the beginning, the middle, the end. She was a showstopper. And now the making of her iconic performance is coming to Netflix in a new documentary called Homecoming. To be perfectly honest with you, I may or may not have cried during the trailer, and in one of the best, super quick shots that got everyone tweeting. It was a scene of Blue Ivy in front of a rehearsal showing all the girls how to whip her hair back and forth just like her mother. So cute, and I'm all here for it, and I know you guys are too. All right, my friends, I hope you continue to take good care of yourselves, really. And for now, you can stick around for the briefing room, which is going to be on at 3:30 p.m. And then you can check us out for World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.